Poetry is specific to the listener, to the creative, the artist. But poetry is a form of self-expression.
Gotcha.
Through verbal expression, and it's verbal expression. Being able to craft words in a specific manner to convey a point or to tell a story. That's like a poetry, and simply, in simplest form. There's so many different cadences, the vocabulary, the passion when you mix in spoken word on a stage, and to prove a point, to get a point across, or to just tell a story. So that to me is poetry, and I think
I'm on a mission for maze, no matter how long it's gonna take. I could just see it already. Give me that new Benz or the Wraith. Watching my own back where I'm from, it was never safe. Yeah. Need 100 M's up in the safe. Last chance, life a movie. Roll another one and get baked. Mix the honor wealth with the Gucci. Yeah, you know when I get up in it, I promise you gon' catch feelings.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Between the Lines podcast. First and foremost, I appreciate you for tuning in. Please go back and enjoy, older episodes. You can catch us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Amazon, wherever you listen to your podcasts. But we have a very, very dope guest today. I'm going to give you a nice brief intro of, Rashan Brown. So ladies and gentlemen, Rashan Brown is the visionary founder and CEO of Poetry Me Please. Hailing from the Bronx, New York, Rashan is on a mission to ensure that poetry remains a vibrant art form. His live spoken word poetry showcase and content studio have become the largest in New York City, attracting over 400 guests per show. Beyond the city limits, the magic of Poetry Me Please has transcended borders, reaching audiences in Accra, Ghana, and London. Rashan's passion goes beyond poetry. It's about creating safe spaces for self-expression, especially for those who share similar experiences. Through his platform, he has successfully bridged gaps, fostering connection and understanding. For Rashan, spoken word isn't just an art form, it's an emotional outlet that allows him to be vulnerable in a society that may not always embrace such moments. Ladies and gentlemen, join us in welcoming Rashan Brown.
Yeah, that was good. That was love. Yeah, that was love.
First and foremost, bro, before I give you the floor, I appreciate you taking your time out of your schedule, coming on. We tried to get you, a while, so for you to just make time to come out, I appreciate that. And I just want to be the first to say, just kind of seeing everything that you got going on with Poetry Me Please. I'm a big fan. I remember going to the first one, and I participated in y'all did like a little music trivia joint.
Yeah, we had we did the name that sample. I know Kev has changed it up a little bit, so apologies.
So I participated and I actually won. I got me a nice dope hat. I should have threw it on, but Rashan, real quick, I know I gave a nice brief intro, but just let the people know a little bit of what you got going on and a little bit more, and then we're gonna dive right in.
Yeah, I mean, you covered a lot of it, but Rashan Brown, I'm a spoken word poet from the Bronx, New York, and the founder and CEO of Poetry Me Please. A little bit more, Poetry Me Please is a spoken word poetry platform that provides a stage for poets across the world to showcase their talents through creative verbal expression. As you mentioned, we are New York City's largest poetry showcase series, and we do showcases on a monthly basis, and we give poets an opportunity to hit the stage and, get their content.
I love it, bro. Let's dive right into it, man. And one thing about this podcast is, everybody may know you, from Poetry Me Please, and they may see, you selling out the Apollo.
Yeah.
They may see you being featured on, news channels and all of these things, but they don't really see the work that you put in to get to where you were. And one thing I like to do on this podcast is not show people too much of, the glitz and the glamour, but I want them to get to really know who Rashan is.
Okay.
Right? Where you come from. So before we dive into all of the good stuff, man, just kind of walk us through just like what was your upbringing like? Like where does Rashan come from? Where does your morals, your values? What was your family life like?
That's solid. I've actually never been asked that. I'm not gonna say I've never been asked that, but I haven't been asked that question or to give you that journey in a while. So from the Bronx, New York. Fun fact. I actually wasn't born in New York. I was born in Wisconsin. I lived in Wisconsin for Madison, it's capital. I lived in Wisconsin that's a fun fact. If you really know me, you know that. But if not, what I'm saying? I talked about it in a few of my poems, but I was there for like 6 months or so, give or take. And then I moved to Jamaica, was living out there with my grandma for a bit, for like a year. And then I moved to the Bronx. Gotcha. So, I've basically been in the Bronx all my life. When people, I don't say that I'm born and raised, but I say raised in the Bronx. Uptown New York, Uptown BX. Everybody has everybody has a version of the hood. So, grew up, in that time. But I would say recognizing my privilege, I went to Catholic school from literally pre-K through 12th grade. So a lot of my upbringing was in the hood, but I'm in a school that, held me to a high level of excellence.
Got you.
So the way in which I approach certain things and how I speak and how I maneuver really, give my props and give my flowers to the teachers that I've had throughout the years, and my coaches. Played basketball, played football, and then went over to SUNY Albany for undergrad. Did a graduate program through Teach for America. I don't know if you're familiar with it. So I taught for 4 years, STEM educator, science, kids really 7 through 12, and then transitioned into the tech field. So now I'm a product manager for ESPN. So my route is kind of crazy. You know what I'm saying? It's a little crazy, but
And you doing that in addition to PME?
in addition, so I'm full-time. I'm full-time on both, really. So I'm full-time product manager, full-time poet, full-time founder, CEO. So it's, really manipulating the hours. And this, as a creative, whether it's in the morning, sometimes during, or even after work when everything is kind of chill, you start to get that creative passion. So that's the moments when I find the time to do that.
I love it, bro. And I kind of hear a lot of your poems and, a lot of your content. You talk about how poetry was kind of, instrumental in your well-being and allowing you to be vulnerable and just
yeah.
But I know that it comes from, I believe you said that you had a breakup and you kind
of tapped into that
poetry. What did that, just for people that's, because for me, I'm a person that I visualize stuff.
Okay.
And when you say that, it's like, okay, I can see how that would put somebody in a poetry bag, but like, what does that look like? What does that look like from the outside looking in? Like, how did you get to the poetry, to that stance, and what clicked and say,
right.
What's going to really be?
Yeah, that's a fair question. Visualize it as a creator, even kind of paint a picture for you, black young man growing up in the hood, in a relationship, not knowing, was never taught how to be in a relationship. Yeah. You just see things, you kind of pick it up like, oh, I guess we boyfriend and girlfriend. All right, cool. What does that mean? Kind of running through that. So the heartbreak happened, break up, and then it's like, yo, how do I express myself? And at that age, it was like you either play sports, basketball, football, maybe something else. But for me, it was basketball, football, or you kind of just be quiet and you act like nothing's happening.
Right.
So for me, I'm like, damn, like I had all that passion inside it. I didn't really know which way to go. And I used to watch a lot of battle rap. So I watched a lot of battle rap, and then I fell into a few poems. So, I always give my shout outs to Loaded Lux. Loaded Lux versus Calico, that famous battle. And although Loaded was rapping, it felt very poetic. So I was like, yo, what is this? You know what I'm saying? I got more into it. Ended up watching a poem by Joshua Bennett. He did this poem for his sister at the White House when Obama was in office. So between those two videos, I'm like, yo, this is wavy. Like, I don't really know what but this is wavy though. Like, I was like, this is a new field. This is a new bag that I haven't really tapped into yet. So then I'm like, fuck it, let me start getting into this bag. Wrote a poem, and as I was writing, I always knew that I loved to write.
Got you.
So it was, it wasn't like I just jumped into poetry. Like I was always a writer.
Got you.
Essays and shit.
So it wasn't just like random.
Yeah, it wasn't random. I used to write essays in school.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? For
So
had to get my money right. So it was all a part of the, it wasn't random. And when I performed it, I remember I recorded it in my living room, and it felt amazing. It, to grieve or to express yourself in that way was therapeutic. And again, no one ever teaches you how to get through a heartbreak, how to get through a close relative or a friend, somebody passes. You don't really get taught those things.
Right.
So when I wrote and I performed it, I felt like all of the pain that I had, I like let it go. And I'm like, oh, I got that, whatever that was, I got to tap more into that. So through, and we can kind of get into it, but throughout the years after that, I would do a poem every now and again, you know what I'm saying, until, further fast forward than, PNP and what I'm doing now.
And then at what point, so you said that, so you were saying that that was a feeling that you wanted to really tap into.
Right.
At what point did you realize that you wanted to have that for everybody else though?
So,
at what point did you have
so what, to share it or to have it?
No, okay. To share it, but to also give other people the platform.
Okay. So that was high school. College, I performed every now and again. Funny story, I had tried out for the school's poetry team organization, didn't make it. And from there, I'm like, damn, I've never been put in a situation where I was never good enough for something. I got cut in, basketball trials freshman year and made the team after. So it was like, it's a different feel. And I'm like, so okay, so I kind of was like, yo, maybe poetry's not for me. Still wrote a little bit, and I remember, pledging alpha. And then once I became an alpha, I'm like, fuck it, I could just spend time to do poetry during my events. So we would do a talent show, we would do a banquet, and I'd write something and perform. I wasn't as consistent, but I would still have 1 or 2 poems for the semester, maybe the year, so not too crazy. It wasn't until after about 2 years when I was in the city, I had went to an open mic. Somebody had invited me, like, yo, I heard you should do poetry. I'm like, I'll tap into it. I wrote a piece titled I Am Black. And that was like, yo, I was able to really focus on my identities.
Love it.
And to then communicate it. And again, that therapeutic feel, that therapy, I tapped back into that. And I was like, yo, this is fire. This is what I need. COVID happened. So all that dead time created such a spark of creativity. So I'm like, okay, I want to record more poetry. Where are the other poets? I didn't really know where to go. It was a gap. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I didn't know about the New Yorkers. I didn't know about the niche poetry organizations. I just thought people found an open mic randomly, and then if you tapped, I wasn't tapped in the poetry community. So I said, bet, let me just make the community myself. I knew that I wanted to record myself and to record it in front of friends. We did parties, we did events. So it's like, yo, this ain't nothing. It's just a part of the game. I was like, let me do a poetry show. Had about 80 people, but I was like, I want to perform, but let me see if I can get some other poets to jump in. That way I can give them content. So the big piece was I was trying to find a community, and I was trying to connect quality poets to quality content.
Love it.
The poets that I saw, they would record in their cars or, maybe in their rooms, nothing like a professional setup. And no knock to them, but there is a different level that you can tap into and really invest in the type of equipment, whether with the mics or the videographers, the photographers, wire in motion, you know what I'm saying? So I wanted to bridge that gap, and then that's how PNP was started.
I love it, bro. And for me, because I'm gonna be honest, before the event that I went to for you last year, I've never really looked at poetry the way that I do now.
Right, okay.
Poetry is completely different.
It's fire.
And rightfully so. Like, there's so many people that might be watching or listening that might feel the same way. Like, of course there's poetry, but the way y'all express yourself
different.
It's completely different. How do one develop the confidence though to share that gift? You know what I mean? Like,
it's a tough
easy
one.
to, for you personally, you recorded yourself a little bit, but you ultimately wanted to share it. But how do I feel confident to say I can share this information and be vulnerable and be transparent? But I don't want everybody to judge me based off of the way I express
what
myself.
you put in, you know
what I mean?
It's
that mindset to really stay mentally fit.
It's a fine line. There's a few ways that I try to empower other poets and even empower myself. The first thing is to memorize your poems.
Okay.
You'll find poets who write a lot, who has poems in their phones or their books. But for PNP, a poet has to have it memorized. Unless we do a pop-up or we at a school, it's a little different. But for the most part, I don't let a poet perform unless they have it memorized. What that does is a few things. It allows you to feel more confident in your piece because you have it memorized. You're more connected to it. During our showcases, we allow the crowd to jump into the poems just to build that energy because that's how it feels in battle rap. When a rapper is rapping and he's really in his bag, the crowd going, it adds a different level of passion to the environment. And it creates this community that you really couldn't get unless you were in an environment like that. So it's a little intimidating, even with the amount of people that we have in our showcase. And that's another thing that I tell poets. I'm like, yo, I want you to perform for PNP. By the way, there's going to be about 300 plus in the spot. Okay. You know what I'm saying? I don't.
Yeah, I'm right.
Right. And just kind of just giving them all the facts ahead of time and be like, you get 7 minutes. I give all poets 7 minutes and they get 2 videos per poem. So it's going to be recorded. You're going to have your time. I don't screen the poets. I just let them do their thing. But I tell them yo, there's going to be 300 people there. There's going to be 400. There's going to be 500 Apollo. There's going to be 1,600 people there. I appreciate that. I'm like, yo, that's on you though. So if you go up there and mess up, that's on you. Anything is on you. PNP is just a platform. You know what I'm saying? And through that, I think psychologically what that does to the poet is they say to themselves, yo, I got to come prepared. And now you want to be prepared. Like anybody with your art, you want to show up. Yeah, you want to make sure it's to the T. we used to do rehearsals earlier on, and rehearsals have been a little bit difficult because we get poets from all over.
Got it.
Everybody's
So, like,
busy. The venues may not have the availability space, but what I noticed was when I used to watch poets rehearse, when you get one poet that's really talented or that's a veteran or a little bit more seasoned, other poets go, oh, that's who's performing. That's who I got to go after. I bet. Let me go back in the lab and cook up.
Right.
So in the same right, when poets go to see our content, they're like, oh, these are the poets that they have. But for us, we've been lucky, blessed, grateful, is that the poets that we put on are usually the ones that care about their art.
I love it.
So make sure they're coming prepared. So, it's
love it.
it's a little bit of like self-preparation, but there are some things that I do along with my team so we can prepare a poet to be confident when they hit the stage.
I love it, bro. And I like how you're just talking about like the art, and that kind of leads right into like, I got a few topics in my head real quick, but I want to, the art of poetry though.
Yeah.
Like, what's the craft of it? Everything has a craft.
Mm-hmm.
What's the craft of podcasting? What's the craft of basketball? Football,
Yeah.
poetry. People think it's just pen and paper.
Yeah.
Which it is, but if you can, what's the true craft and art of poetry? Like, what goes into getting better at the craft?
Yeah.
Right? How can one really say, okay, if I want to do poetry,
Right.
this is what I need to do to get better at it? Study people, like what can you say, with your experience, like helped you become a great poet?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
As anything, it's a few things. The first piece is storytelling.
There we go.
It's storytelling.
Love it.
It's
There you
you painting your picture with words.
There you go.
You know what I'm saying? Simply. And from there's a lot of ways to do that. Poetry is so beautiful because I could talk about something personal to me. And as a poet, it's like, as Rush the Mic the poet, majority of my pieces that I perform are specific to me and how I grew up.
Love it.
I lean towards the pain that I had or the pain that I have, and it's so easy for me to express that because these are the stories that I don't normally communicate to people. On a typical day, you're usually uplifted and you're happy, just naturally. Like, we have a lot of things to be grateful for, but there is a part of us that is a bit dark, that is more on the side of like, that's pessimistic, apathetic when you look at those type of words. And it's like, in order for me to move past that, I want to write about it and get it off when I'm on stage.
Yep.
So I could talk about a heartbreak. I could talk about losing a friend. I could talk about, the lack of love in all different facets of my life because it makes me feel good to get it off. Versus another poet, they may write about all the good things happening in their lives. You know what I'm saying? So not only is it storytelling, but it's also personal. It's you being able to connect with a specific feeling and then having the crowd connect with that. Or you might, I might talk about, R.I.P. John, one of my friends that had passed, and I'll say, I'll make a poem and I'll talk about him, and somebody in the crowd go, damn, I lost my pops, I lost my mom, I lost this, I lost that, so they could connect with it. So that's one side of it. The other side is then what I do again, and what poets will do if they get commissioned or if somebody asks them like, hey, I want you to write for me. I want you to perform at my show. I want you to perform at my wedding. Tell me or like help me create this story. And now it's like, bet, I'm still telling a story, but now it's your story. You know what I'm saying? So that when I think about the art of poetry, it's being able to tell the story. Then like spoken word, I think about the performance aspect of it, the emotions and the passion that I'm able to convey when I'm on a stage.
I love it. Now, how do you, and I kind of want to backtrack real quick, you talk about PNP and, like just the community you've built.
Yeah.
How do PNP kind of keep the camaraderie amongst the poets, right? Like you've had, good showcases. Like, do y'all have a community where y'all a chat?
Yeah.
Like, do y'all have like, like how do y'all stay in touch? Like what's the community aspect like in PNP?
Yeah.
So aside from just the content that
Right. So we look at it two ways. The poets that have performed or that will be performing, we do create a chat. I educate them on what to expect and also just like tips. And, we ask other poets and I'll ask other poets like, yo, when I first started off, I didn't do that many shows. So I would ask poets like, yo, how are some ways that you were able to memorize your pieces, or what's some techniques that you use when you're on stage? And I empower and I encourage poets to talk amongst themselves, especially when we did rehearsals. You get that camaraderie and you get that like community feel. And then on the second bit is the network on the digital side is our listserv. So our community through emails and like, through social media, where you're seeing poets. You can go on P&P's page right now and you see a plethora of poets. You could reach out to one of them. You could connect with them to do a collab. Like, it's all access for you. You know what I'm saying? And what we also am grateful for is the fact that people are posting more poetry. Whether you're at P&P or somebody else, we're teaching poets like, yo, here's a way for you to attack social media and to really build your digital portfolio. So when poets are doing that, you could go online and you might just run into a poetry video. Whereas a year, 2 years, 3 years ago, that wasn't really a thing. So slowly but surely, we're building up everyone's, I would say, ability to not only find poetry, but to also appreciate it more. So that's the community aspect as well.
And you kind of mentioned just like, the art, the storytelling, and, when it comes to poetry, I'm trying to figure out a good way to ask this question. So it's like, for you do poetry, but a lot of it is your life. A lot of it is really things that you've experienced. But then you also might just have people who do poetry, but it's fiction. Right? Like, what's the difference between the two? Because I feel like a real poet needs to be emotionally attached to that piece. The story. But then you have people that's just really good storytellers. Right. But it's not really things that they've experienced.
Right. It's like,
Is there like a disconnect in any way? Or like, do you still see it as just like poetry is poetry? Like, it is very versatile.
So poetry is poetry. Poetry is versatile. I have my own personal opinions, and my personal opinion is I write about things that are personal to me, but I've also wrote about things that are not personal to me.
Okay.
So you look at it like an actor. A lot of actors will have a script, have a role that has nothing to do with it's literally nothing to do with their life. But because they're so good at the craft and the art, they're able to make it feel like that's their life. You look at Denzel Washington.
Got it.
Obviously, he grew up. He ain't grew up in the he grew up in the hood, but it's like the stuff that he's acted on. You see Denzel, you like that's a bad. You know what I'm saying? That's a bad. You know. So in that same right, I do the same thing where I'm able to connect with those types of content, and I'm looking forward to it. But I like to do it when I'm able to create it for someone else's vision.
Got you.
I wouldn't just sit here and rate something that's not specific to me and then perform it. I'd feel a disconnect. I probably wouldn't be to connect with it. But if I'm doing it for a specific purpose, then I am. The same way that I look at positive poetry.
Got it.
I really, it's the first time I said this out loud, I really don't like positive poetry.
Positive poetry. Now, when you say positive, what does that mean? Like,
positive as in anything that's uplifting.
Uplifting, okay.
Yeah, I really don't connect with it because the reason why I started.
I mean, cut you up. I just don't want to forget the thought.
Yeah.
So anything uplifting. So meaning any positive story of just
like something that will encouraging you, something that make you laugh.
And you would want something. So you would rather like just
because I started writing poetry due to heartbreak and pain.
Got it. So that's what.
So I lean into that.
Got it.
So when I see, and don't get me wrong, I've written poetry that has been uplifting, that has been positive, funny, but those are more difficult for me to write about.
Got you.
So if I go to a showcase, I honestly rather sit and watch a showcase of pain.
Got you.
Because for me, I'm like, I really felt that. Like I could connect with it. Versus when I see positive or uplifting poetry, I connect with it. But it's more of I haven't really found a way to appreciate it as much. Interestingly enough, but that's just specific to me as a poet. You know what I'm saying? So I might say, somebody be like, that sounds crazy.
Yeah,
and it probably does, but to me.
I'm just playing devil's advocate.
No,
So it's like, okay, that's fair, and that's rightfully so.
Yeah.
That's super fair, but you have the typical person who will look at your story and say, I see why he leans more toward the not so uplifting, but being somebody who was able to overcome that.
Yeah.
Should still be able to look at the uplifting just as much as the hardship. So why do you think it is that you haven't been able to, like
the foundation of my poetry, right? I didn't start writing because I was happy.
I got you.
And I have to remind myself of that a lot of the times when I do think about what does poetry look like for me in the future. When am I most passionate? It's when I'm writing about something pain, because I'm using it to get it off. That's how I express myself. Something that's happy, I can talk about that out loud.
Yeah.
I talk about that often. I can live that often. Whereas the pain is something that's hidden inside.
Yeah.
So when I say that I listen to like happy or uplifting poetry, I like it. Everybody needs it. It feels good. But a piece of me goes, that was cool.
Got it.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that was cool. Versus if I hear something I'm like, damn, that shit was crazy. You know what I'm saying? So that's just personal to me.
And what does, like, if there was a person who wanted to come up to you and just say, like, yo, can you just explain to me what poetry truly is? Like, in your words, what is poetry? Why is poetry important? How does it help the culture move forward?
Yeah.
Like, why is it so, I don't want to say slept on, but for lack of better words, why doesn't it get the credibility that it deserves?
Yep.
Like, what is poetry? Why is it so?
Poetry is specific to the listener, to the creative, the artist. But poetry is a form of self-expression.
Gotcha.
Through verbal expression, and it's verbal expression. Being able to craft words in a specific manner to convey a point or to tell a story. That's like a poetry, and simply, in simplest form. There's so many different cadences, the vocabulary, the passion when you mix in spoken word on a stage, and to prove a point, to get a point across, or to just tell a story. So that to me is poetry, and I think the reason why poetry has been slept on and hasn't gotten the appreciation that it deserves are a few reasons. A lot of the poets and the great poets, the poets that can really cultivate and make a movement, are not rappers. So when you look at the business side of the art, there's not much upside in poetry. Labels are pushing rap, pushing R&B, pop, you name it. Writers, you might find a song that you really like, and a poet might have wrote it, or they might come a songwriter, because that's where the money is. To have poetry as a hobby is dope and it's cool, and you can make money off of poetry. But what I think is a lot of the poets become rappers because that's where they've been pushed to. And what I've been doing and what P&P is doing is showing you how important poetry can be and ways to, make a living off of poetry. It's a train, it's a slow moving train, or some days it might be a fast moving train. But it's showing you, I said this in another podcast that I did, but I'm like, in any formal event, you should have a poet. Any event that you go to and there's a mic and there's a podium, there's a stage, there should be a poet. There's no reason for a poet not to be there. A poet just needs anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes to get a good poem off. So why not? And, to pay that poet to tell a story, if there's a theme, give the poet the creative autonomy. Say, hey, here's the theme for the event. I want you to write something for it. And then have a poet do it. And you know what I'm saying? Voiceovers, voice acting, those are, a poet does that. You know what I'm saying? A lot of actors do that. But a poet can be just that. So, like I said, it's a few different reasons, but I think I've leaned more into that. I think that's why poetry hasn't been given that, you know what I'm saying?
Got you. Let me just get these few questions off for the last segment, get you out of here.
Yeah.
So you've been featured in a lot of articles and news shows and things of that sort. Walk us through some of the experiences that you've had and some of the platforms you've been able to really express P&P and just put poetry on the map. Give the audience some of those.
Yeah, so I had a big one. I have a big one with Rupi Kaur. She's a famous poet. She tours the world. She did a world tour. I had the luxury of opening up for her at King's Theater in Brooklyn. At the time, that was my largest audience. That was the biggest stage I've ever been on. And being able to see what poetry could look like from an individual artist standpoint, she's on tour in the world as a poet. And I was like, I can do this.
Is that your goal?
So that's one of my goals, being able to tour the world with my poetry, of course. That's definitely one of the goals. And that helped me fuel not only my solo show, which I'm in the works of, but also the Apollo. I'm in a theater, I'm like, bet, I can do this. I can do the Apollo.
That's amazing.
I can do the Apollo, you know what I'm saying? Through that energy. Another one was with the Cleveland Browns, which was my largest poetry opportunity I've ever been on. About 64,000 people in that stadium. So I'm not only did I was commissioned to write a piece to honor James Brown legacy at a season opener. So that process in itself, doing the research, which is the process, which I like more of that. They would reach out and said, hey, we want to honor his legacy. We want you to write the poem. Here are the things we want you to touch upon, but you have creative autonomy to do that. I said, bet. I did my research. was able to come up with a poem, different segments, to different music selections that they had. And then when I performed it, you know, there's a live orchestra playing the song, there's a painter on the field, but I'm leading through with my poetry. So I'm talking about his legacy, how Jim Brown started as an All-American in high school, then through college, and then in the NFL, and then his civil rights movement. So being able to do that and then performing in such a large audience, I'm like, yo, this is wavy. You know what I'm saying?
That's so these questions are more intentional. So
Okay.
just like intentional questions that I just got written down. You know, it's a variety of just poetry and just things I just want you to be very intentional on. And we're gonna wrap this up. So, how do you believe poetry contributes to the broader cultural and societal conversations? You understand? I'm gonna repeat the question. Repeat it real quick.
Yeah, you can repeat that.
So how do you believe poetry can contribute to the broader cultural and societal conversations?
I think through poetry, you're able to have a lot of those conversations and put it in to use the art to explain it better.
I love it.
You know what I'm saying? You can make a point like how, you know, Dave Chappelle does a great job of this on his comedy skits. I was watching one last night with my sister, and the points that he made through his jokes, it was like, oh, I get it. He spoke to me. Same thing with poetry. You may not understand it when somebody says it in a podcast or a vlog or like in conversation, but if you listen to a poet perform it, at the end you're like, oh, I get it. So that's a way that, you know, we're kind of bridging the gap between the misunderstandings and the miscommunications.
Beautiful, bro. Are there any specific poets or works that have had a lasting impact on your perspective of the importance of poetry?
Yeah, there's a ton of poets. Big Joshua Bennett, Jay Ivey, seeing what he's done in the poetry community. A lot of the poets that I've had on stage, King Camayera, give his flowers, Matt Capone, Maui. So I'm gonna just shout out everybody that did the Apollo, Surah.
Shout out to them.
Black Chakra, Roddy, capital R, capital A, capital D, capital I, CB, you know what I'm saying? Like the poets that I've had, Mod the God, rapper / poet, you know what I'm saying? Like everybody that I had recently, seeing how they're able to really control, and shout out to Shad wrote that, is seeing how they're able to control a crowd and the topics they're able to like pinpoint and like lean into has been amazing to watch somebody so confident in their craft. You know what I'm saying? It's a different level. So shout out, and all the poets that have hit the PNP stage.
I love it. Just a few more. How has the role of poetry evolved over time? And what role does it play in contemporary society?
So it's evolved over time, you know, looking back at the last poets, and, you know, we had Doom, was presenting him with the award, you know, the Deaf Poetry Award, even like linking back to the Deaf Poetry community, seeing how they were able to bring it to that main stage and give poets an opportunity to showcase. And then how the shift has evolved is now you're seeing it again. It kind of died out. Again, a lot of the poets became rappers. You don't really see it no more. And then in addition to the art, building community. You walk into a PNP, you see a sea of black people. Black people don't have safe spaces where they can enjoy art in such a vulnerable space and to express themselves. Because even as a listener in the crowd, when somebody's up there talking about somebody that they lost or someone that they love, it's vulnerable for you, because what it does for you, you start to think about those people in your life. And now you're sitting down going, yo, I've had people come up to me like, yo, I cried when you performed that. And it's crazy because I cried when I wrote it. So that transfer of energy is sacred, and you don't really see that a lot in the black community. So in society, not only are we giving poets a platform, we're also giving the everyday black person an opportunity to de-stress or to connect with a personal side that they may have forgot existed within them.
Beautiful, bro. Lastly, man, like, what advice would you give up and coming poets? You know, what message would you leave them with? You know, for anybody listening or watching that just says, you know what, his story is dope. I would love to do poetry. I've been trying to start, but I'm just trying to find the right way. Like,
my go-to, memorize your poems. You should have 7 poems at minimum memorized at any point in time that you can tap into on a dime. Record your content. Anytime you do anything, have it recorded so you can start to build your digital portfolio. and then you tap back into a lot of the platforms, social media platforms, graphic designer platforms, and just media platforms where you're able to put your work out there. And don't be afraid to put your work out there. When I first started writing, somebody was like, yo, what if somebody says it's trash? I'm like, damn. Sometimes I write something and I'll be like, yeah, that was fake trash. I've said that to myself. There's a level of maturity that you have to be at and you have to like tap into in order to say that and be confident. Not everyone is going to think that your poetry is fire, but if you can get at least one person to connect with it, and even if that one person is you, then you've done a good job as a poet, because it's self-expression. How dare somebody say that your self-expression in the purest form wasn't good? It sounds crazy. You know what I'm saying? So I tell poets, be confident to record yourself and don't be afraid to do things for free. And I say that and I lean into that, because there's opportunities to make money and there's opportunities where you can gain value by doing something for free. Insert yourself. If you see somebody's having an art show, you see somebody's having a comedy show, you see somebody's having an event. Hey, do you mind if I open up or close the show? We'd love to have you, but we don't have any budget. Don't worry about it. You recording? As long as I get a recording, we good. Or don't worry about it. I'll invest into a video team and have pull up. I just need a platform. I just need a room.
That's beautiful.
You know what I'm saying? So I tell poets to lean into that. Don't be afraid, because opportunities will come. Because in order to get that commission opportunity, in order to make money, you have to show people what it looks like when you are on stage.
Beautiful.
And if you don't have the money to invest into yourself at that point, there might be somebody that can give you that opportunity, and then you can take that content and run with it.
Beautiful. And I ask this, I just try to be as transparent and open as possible, as I usually wrap up the show with this question. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 obviously being the highest, 1 being the lowest, where are you business-wise, spiritually, and emotionally? So on a scale of 1 to 10, and why? Where are you business-wise, mentally, and spiritually?
I say I'm at a 7 business-wise. I've made some great moves since we've been founded. But I know there's room for improvement. And 2024 will be a pivotal year for myself and PNP included. Spiritually, I feel like I'm always at a 10.
Amazing.
Energy is always uplifted, because that's like the, involuntary. Like I know that, especially I connect spiritually with faith, and I know that I'm always strong on that side. So that's always at a 10 for me, naturally. Emotionally, it fluctuates. Right now, I'm at an 8. I'm feeling good. But there are moments when I drop below a 5. There are moments that I hit a 10. So I say emotionally, I fluctuate very often.
Dope. So yeah, bro, I mean, I appreciate you. Just for, time, want to make sure you get out of here. Again, bro, I appreciate you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
doing for the city. Keep doing your thing. I look forward to going to the next event.
Yeah.
Family, real quick, how can they follow you?
Follow us on Poetry Me Please on all platforms. Next showcase coming up February 11th. We're going to do the poetry show, and then we're going to jump into the Super Bowl. So we're going to have the show to start, and then we're going to do the big game after. So that's our next event. But Poetry Me Please on all platforms.
Shout out PNP, man. Look, if you enjoy, like, comment, subscribe. You can listen on, audio, Spotify, Apple Music. Watch us on YouTube. Leave a comment. We're going to get back to you. I love y'all, man. Peace. Rashan, we out. Peace.
Love.
Appreciate you, bro. How was that? It was cool.